Hey guys, it's Adrian for ProductionCrate.com. Today, as a very special treat, we're doing a collaboration with Grace from the channel ZonZonZonbi. So go ahead and check that channel out if you want to see how this Star-Lord costume was made. Today we're doing the special effects from the elemental guns or the quad blasters from Guardians of the Galaxy. It's supposed to be the top barrel is a plasma shot, which is a fiery blast used for lethal force, and the bottom one is the electric shot, which is electricity used for electrocuting and stunning your targets but not killing them. And this blaster is supposed to be capable of doing both these things at the same time as well. But in the way they're depicted in the movies, it's a little inconsistent because sometimes they just have it as yellow and purple lasers. So today we're going to go ahead and show you how to do both. So the footage I'm going to use is right here. We've got Zombie pointing her guns, pretending to shoot some junk out of them, and it's a little bit shaky, so I'm just going to stabilize it real quick, which is so easy. In my effects and presets panel, I will just type warp stabilizer. Well, there we go. Warp stabilizer VFX is what the effect is called now, and I'll just drag that on, and it's going to do the work for me. I remember when this effect first came out, and it was amazing, and it is still as amazing today as it was then. It can look a little bit silly if you have way too much motion in your shot, but we don't. We just have just a little bit of shake that we want to get rid of, which is what this thing is really great at. I do want to make one change, which is instead of smooth motion, I want to go ahead and change that to no motion. And we'll just leave it alone and let it finish what it's doing. Actually, in the meantime, we can go ahead and grab some stock footage. So let's go over to the ProductionCrate website, and under VFX and Media Elements, let's find the Magic and Power section. And I'm going to go for the Spells and Beams section, and this is the one I like, magic spell number 4. It's really just a lightning bolt. I've gotten so much mileage out of this effect. I use it all the time. All the time. Back in After Effects, I can see that my warp stabilizer has done its job, and this is looking pretty much perfect. We are now free to bring in that magic spell element, and now I can grab my electric footage and bring that in to the comp, and I'm going to right click on it and hit time, enable time remapping, and that's going to give me 2 keyframes, one at the beginning and one at the end. And if I move these keyframes, it will shorten or make the clip longer, and I actually can't see both of them because my stock footage is longer than the actual footage that I'm applying the effects to, because it's just tutorial, so I just wanted to do a short example. But that's okay if I move the layer, and I can bring those keyframes in, and I'm able to see both of them now. And I'm just going to hit Alt and the opening and close brackets to just bring that clip down to a more manageable size. And now I'm just going to find a couple of these blasts that I want to add electricity to. I'm not going to add electricity to all of them because some of them are supposed to be fire and some of them are supposed to be both. So I'm just going to add it in a few places. I'll go ahead and put it maybe not on the first one, but on the second one. So let me just scrub in the footage to where the gun is almost at its final resting position, and I'll move my lightning clip into the correct time, align my first keyframe up with that, and then I'll scrub forward to when she puts it down, and I'll move my other keyframe there. So now my lightning clip is the correct duration, but I need to trim off the end of it. All right, now I just need to put it in the right place. So I'll use my pan behind tool to move the anchor point to the origin of this lightning, and then I will move that to the tip of the gun, and I will hit P to bring up the position, and I will use page up and page down to move forward and back frame by frame. Actually, this is supposed to go on the bottom barrel. The top one is for the fire. So let me just redo that, but marry it to the bottom barrel instead. All right, and once all that keyframing is done, I can hit this switch here under the little cube icon to turn it into a 3D layer, and now I can just twist it on its Y-axis to make sure that it is pointed in the right direction, and that is how you add the lightning bolt. So I'll just repeat the process a couple more times to add in a couple more of these lightning bolts. All right, that's fine. I think 2 lightning bolts is enough for this shot. So another thing I would like to do is come back to Footage Crate, and we're going to find the Fire and Sparks section. And I have these spark blasts, which as you can see, they're they're pretty much the same, but from different angles. And I'm just gonna download the ones I need. So like for this shot, I'm only gonna need the 60 degrees one and the 30 degrees one. So I'll just go ahead and download both of those, and I'll bring them into my composition, and then I'll drag one of those into my comp. It looks like on this one, I would like the one that's tilted 30 degrees away from the camera. So this is kind of, it's on an angle, but it's kind of more facing the camera than it is facing to the side. So I'll just drag that into the right spot. It's a little big, so I'll scale that down, and I want to color it blue to match the lightning. So I'm just gonna solo this lightning and the sparks so I can have a look at those colors to make sure they match pretty well. Maybe I want to add a hue and saturation effect to my sparks and just twist it until they start to turn sort of blue and purple like this lightning is. Might want to bring my lightness of that up. There we go. That's not bad. Now on these spark effects, I don't have to keyframe the position because they're just kind of an explosion. So I'm just going to drop it right there where the gun goes off and just let it explode. Now that I'm looking at it, I kind of want it to be bigger. It might look like it's too big here, but once you play it in context, not so much. And I'll go ahead and make that into an additive transfer mode. And that makes it match a little better. And then I'll just also grab the other spark blast, which is the 60 degrees one, because this gun is facing more towards the side than it is towards the camera, but not quite at 90 degrees. So I'll just drop my spark blast in there, make that an additive transfer mode. And I can go to my other spark blast and copy the hue and saturation effect, Control C, and just paste it onto here to get those same colors. I'm going to go ahead and just copy the sparks and the lightning, all of it, and Control Shift C to pre-compose it. I'll call it lightning. Moving all the attributes to the new composition just to keep it clean, so it's all in one layer now. And I'll go ahead and change that layer to a screen or an add transfer mode. It is up to you, except I'm the one recording this tutorial, so it is actually up to me. Color dodge is also cool. I'll just go with add. And then I just need to do a little bit of light, cast it onto her body from this lightning. So to do that, I'm just going to add a new solid and give it a bluish color, really pretty blue. And I'll just draw a mask around where her head and torso are. And I'll feather that out, and I'm just going to have it start when this little explosion goes off. I'll set an opacity keyframe for 100%, and then I'll go forward to when there's no more lightning. I'll just fade that away, and I will end the layer. But then I'm also going to just add a wiggle expression to this because it's lightning, so it kind of flashes. So I'm gonna hold down Alt to click that stopwatch and type wiggle. In parentheses, I'll have it wiggle probably every frame, so 30, because this is probably a 30 frames per second composite, by a value of maybe 60, so it's going to be flashing quite a bit. As you can see, it's very flashy. It even goes away at some point, but that's perfectly fine. And then I might need to readjust my mask. If I hit M, I can bring up the mask path and I can keyframe it. Should be really easy. I just set a keyframe on the beginning, and if I go to the end, I can just drag the whole mask. It doesn't have to be super precise keyframing, and then just make sure that it doesn't jump off of the subject too much. And then we need to pick a transfer mode for that, so we can just cycle through these transfer modes. Add looks good as usual. Lighten looks a little janky. So I think I like classic color dodge, but it's looking a little extreme. So I can just, on my first keyframe, I'll just bring that opacity down a little bit. Cool. And then I also need to do it on my other lightning blast, so that's okay. I'll just duplicate that layer and bring it to the right point in time. And then if I hit M to bring up my mask path, I can unkeyframe it and then re-keyframe it and just make sure it's in the right spot. All right, and that is the lightning portion done. Next, we want to add some fire. So I'm already in the fire and sparks section because I downloaded these sparks earlier. So I'm just going to scroll down, down, down until I find these fire bursts. See, these are what I want. I'll go ahead and download this one, which is fire burst number 3. And then I'll also download another one, fire burst number 10. The numbers I picked, 3 and 10, are just arbitrary because they're all pretty much the same thing, just different instances. is a few of them have, like this one has 2 different blasts in it. That's not really gonna help us on this specific project, so I'm not gonna use one like that. But for the most part, they're all the same. Well, they serve the same purpose, but they look different. So just pick a couple of those. I recommend using more than one because you don't want them all to look the same. I'm just gonna use 2 for the purposes of this tutorial, but if you're doing a lot of fire blasts, maybe download all of them. And adding the actual fire elements into the footage is pretty much exactly the same as adding the lightning elements. So that's why I'm just running through it in time lapse here, so I'm not just showing you the same thing over and over again. Just make sure that you remember to move your anchor points into the right spot and you should be good. So now I've got lightning and I have fire. I want to add some sparks to the fire also, the same sparks from the lightning, because I figure my reasoning behind that is if I use the same element for both, it'll make them more cohesive, like they're supposed to be coming from the same weapon. So on this first one, it looks like I probably need the 30 degrees one. So I'll just move that into the right timing. I'm going to flip it horizontal. I'm not making this a 3D layer, and I'm just going to use the original coloring of it. Okay, for this next one, I think I also need the 30 degrees one. So I'll just grab that, bring that in, drop it in the right spot. On this last one, I'll use my 60 degrees one. Just drop that in. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so now I want to grab all my sparks and my fires, Control-Shift-C to pre-compose them, call that layer fire, and I will change the transfer mode of that as well. Let's see what I want to use. For this one, I think I'll use screen so it doesn't get too crazy. And I need to add my light reflecting on the actor as well. So let me just go ahead and do that. For these, I'm going to find the point where the fire is at its kind of biggest, which is right here, and I'll add a new solid and maybe just sample this orange color from the fire itself, and then kind of bring up that saturation a little bit because it's been contaminated by the background a little. So there we go, that's my color. I'll turn it off, but I will push the letter T to bring up the opacity. I will keyframe it here, and I will nudge back to when it is born, and I'll turn that to 0, and then I'll also go to the point where it's supposed to be gone, and I'll turn it to 0 there as well. And I'll just trim my layer for cleanliness. And now let's go ahead and do our masking. So I'll just mask around the front of the actress here. Cool. Turn that back on so we can see it, and hit F to bring up our feather controls. Feather that real good, and then give it a transfer mode. I'm gonna go with hard light on this one, but on my 100% keyframe, I'm gonna bring it down so it's not as intense. And then we just need to make sure that our mask stays put. All right, nice. So let's go forward to the other instances of fire, and we'll duplicate that layer and just alter our keyframes to match the new clip. All right, here that is with the lighting effects all added in. The last thing I want to do is add some heat distortion from this fire. So what I'm going to do is in my project panel over here, I'm going to grab the fire composition, hit Control D to duplicate it, and I'm going to call this one Displacement Map. Just change that name, and I'm going to open it up and make a few changes in here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all of my spark clips so I just have the fires. All right, and what I want to do is on all of those, I'm just going to hit Control A to highlight all of them and hit S to bring up the scale, and I'm going to scale them up so they're a little bit bigger. Oh, and those are all going to scale from the correct position because we changed the anchor points earlier, so they're all in the right spot. And then next, I'm going to hit U on the keyboard so I can see my keyframes, and I just want the time remap ones, and on each one, I'm going to pull it out just a little bit on the last keyframe so these last a little bit longer. Maybe I'll give each of them 3 additional frames, 2 or 3 additional frames. Okay, and that doesn't change the keyframes on the position that we keyframed earlier. We want to leave those alone, and the orientation as well. We just want to make them bigger and last a little bit longer. So let's go back into the main composition, and I'm going to bring my displacement map comp into the main composition, and I'll poke its eye out so we can't see it anymore. And then I'll add a new adjustment layer over everything, and I'll call this heat displacement. You may have noticed when I added that that layer that the lighting on her face changed, and that's just because it's a wiggle. We have a wiggle expression on there to generate random values, and the wiggle expression is dependent on the order of the layers. So whenever you add a new layer on top of it or change the order of the layers, your values are going to change. You can see if I grab that layer and I move it, it's going to start to look a little bit different every time I move it around, which is okay because we didn't precisely keyframe it. It's random anyway, so that's fine. It's not a big deal. It's still going to look equally good usually. But if that sort of thing happens to you and you were like, oh no, I really liked the wiggle expression that I had and now it doesn't look good anymore, you can just move the layer back to where it originally was in the layer stack and you'll get your correct keyframing back. All right, so I need to move to a place in the composition that actually has fire on screen so I can see what I'm doing. And on the heat displacement layer, I'm going to add a displacement map effect. And I'm going to tell it to look at the displacement map layer, and then we're just going to mess with the horizontal and vertical displacement until we get something we like. All right, my edges are looking a little bit silly. We're getting like some bubbling going on, so we could just go into the displacement map composition and add a new adjustment layer to that. And if we put it above everything and just give it a fast box blur, turn that up a little bit, and that will soften our edges. Cool, and now that's like the fire is bending the light from the background as fire actually does. We're getting some black on our edges here, and that's just because it's displacing pixels that don't actually exist anymore. So let's go ahead and add a motion tile effect and put that below the displacement map. Check mirror edges and bring up output width and height just a little bit. That'll fix your edges. So in addition to displacing light, fire also causes it to blur. So I'm going to add a camera lens blur effect to that layer as well, and I'll also tell it to use the displacement map as its blur map layer, and that'll just cause the parts that are displaced to be blurred. And if you want, you can put the blur before the displacement so the blur is being displaced. That's really just a matter of taste. You can do whichever you want. And then also on this heat displacement layer, we can leave it above the fire or we can bring it below the fire so the fire is still crisp and in focus. And I think that that is what I'm going to elect to do. And now this half of the tutorial is finished. Now you know how to add fire and lightning into your shot. Adding laser beams is a similar process, yet somehow even easier. What we need to do is on ProductionCrate, navigate to the sci-fi section, and here you'll see we have several laser beam clips available for download to our pro members. Compositing these is a super similar process to the electricity and the fire, so I'm going to run through the rest of it in time lapse. Alright, there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me push pixels around on my screen for half an hour, compressed down into about 26 seconds, and I hope that you enjoyed the tutorial as a whole and found it informative. If you want to see another effect from the Guardians of the Galaxy movie done in After Effects, you can check out the Yaka Arrow tutorial here on this channel, and you can subscribe to make sure that you're notified of the other tutorials in this series. I also hope that you check out ZonZonZonbi's channel. If you have any interest at all in cosplay, this is a channel I recommend. She's extremely prolific, she's got a lot of great stuff on there, and she also has a very light and fun personality, so her videos are just a blast and a half to watch. And with that, I think I'm gonna leave you guys for the day. So, as usual, my name has been Adrian Jensen. Thank you for watching, and remember to make it awesome. Peace.